Ever wondered what makes TV so powerful in Jamaica? Time to find out. Welcome to Global TV Group 358, where television meets innovation. We're not just about shows, we're about shaping society. In Jamaica, TV keeps you informed, connects diverse voices, and supports democracy. Imagine a Jamaica where broadcasters unite, sharing data and collaborating globally. That's us, a unified voice in the TV industry. Did you know TV advertising is still king? It drives website traffic, boosts brand equity, and powers integrated campaigns. Even in an age of digital, TV stands strong, resilient in tough times. Our Global TV Deck is your treasure trove of insights and data. With charts, graphs, and success stories, it's your guide to impactful TV advertising. Curious to learn more? Visit our website and see how Global TV Group 358 keeps television at the heart of entertainment in Jamaica. Get ready to binge watch the future.
Put me again, you can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy scandal, we can't buy time. You can't put me again. Can't put me again. You can't put me again. Hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. You touch up line and I resort to crime. You can't put me again.
What fi go to eat no money, what fi at you, eat no at you. Covid money, miss away in the yellow correct you. Use the youth, the money, waste for must have anti-statue. Say me like a catch you, but bigger than a figure you. Take the spit of money, God and say that is not you. One day the man above end up in my gut up. Too much eating at the kitchen, some a fly by like a patu. My singers and DJs and social media's coming at you.
It burn me,
300% please.
it burn me,
Garbage pile up the day.
it burn me,
Give the teacher them
it
raise.
burn me,
I see corruption face.
it burn me,
Mash down the people them house.
it burn me,
Every day appear arms out.
it burn me,
Appear money them a thief.
it burn me.
And them a sell out the beach.
Can't put me again. You can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy scandal, we can't buy time. You can't put me again. Can't put me again. You can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. You touch up line and I resort to crime. You can't put me again.
Come me say dig up all the charities and all of the givers. Some a go like say them powerful, me no make a bigger. The already promise it, none of them not deliver. Cut up the youth, the rapper, they down in our river. Member bowl honey and they lie them tell. Corruption smell and they pocket them swell. When police don't a market like Satan out of hell, go mash up people start like people themselves.
It burn me,
On them treat the market man.
it burn me,
On them a treat the cat man.
it burn me,
On them treat the peanut man.
it burn me,
On them a treat the dirt man.
it burn me,
On them a treat the son man.
it burn me,
How them a treat policeman.
it burn me,
How them a treat soldier man.
it burn me.
How them a treat everyone.
Can't put me again. You can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy scandal, we can't buy time. You can't put me again. Can't put me again.
Stevie dim day. We in Global TV says certain kind of friend we no keep. And some informer friend we love like. We in Global, bona fake friend and bona tape. We in Global, we not promote them, we not support them. Look at them on the cheek, come here represent for. We in Global TV, check it.
Good evening, and welcome to Drive Time London. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will look at an interview that Lady Bartlett did with the great old Auntie Bees. Yes, that pedophile sanctuary they call the BBC. You know, they incubate pedophiles over there. But the BBC World Service interviewed Priscilla Bartlett on the 24th of November 2024. And together we are going to listen to the Dancing on Ice with EDMUND Bartlett. We'll also like to invite Cliff Hughes along this evening to hear if he understand or learn anything from a sort of independent questioning where you have no bone to pick with the government or have anyone in particular party-wise to support. To my community party and all my family members, platform moderators, membership holders, viewers, subscribers, commenters, and trolls, good evening and welcome to Drive Time London. Marcia Stewart, Jason Kane, Abinasa Cody, David Jervis, Sophia Hall, Oops Official, Wagwan, long time no see. Isilda Williams, good evening, and welcome everyone. It's going to be up to you to judge whether Ed Bartlett answer the questions or not. Hold on there. It's rather for you to judge. Let me get the slot that I want. If EDMUND Bartlett really answered the questions, or did EDMUND Bartlett just try to dance his way on ice? Why am I not finding the one that I particularly need? We're going to listen together. Annie Jones, bros, good evening and welcome. After we listen to, there may be some point through the interview, it's 22 minutes long, where I will stop and interject with EDMUND Bartlett way and style of answering question, or his evasiveness in answering questions that was put to him by the BBC World Service interviewer, Hard Talk. Everywhere they go, they lie, you know. And everywhere they go, they keep up the same practice. They don't have no way. They don't have no way. Where they don't go. Yes, that's the one I want. There is nowhere that they go where them don't carry the same lying, disgusting, canatis, trickery behavior with them. But when interviewed by journalists outside of Jamaica, you realize that they're even liar than when they're being interviewed by Jamaican journalists. The difference is, Marcia Thomas, that the foreign journalists will press them on certain issues, even though EDMUND Bartlett practiced well his dancing on ice behavior. Let's get into the fracas of the interview. And bear in mind, this is a recent interview, the 24th. It was released on the 24th of November, 2024.
Welcome to Hard Talk from the BBC World Service with me, Stephen Sackett. My guest today has long been one of the most high-profile international advocates for the charms of his country. EDMUND Bartlett is a long-serving politician in the Jamaican Labour Party. He's served as a minister in several different departments over several decades. But for the last 8 years, he's been the island nation's Minister of Tourism. It is a job that matters. Tourism accounts accounts for 1/3 of Jamaica's economic activity. Having bounced back from COVID, there is now an ambitious plan to get annual visitor numbers up to 6, even 8 million. A pretty extraordinary number for an island of fewer than 3 million people. But there are problems clouding this sunny horizon. Climate change and more frequent extreme weather events threaten to cost Jamaica dear. And the island's attractiveness to visitors has taken a hit thanks to endemic violence and gang-related crime, which has put Jamaica close to the top of the global league table for murders per capita. Internal instability used to dog Jamaican politics and management of the economy, but in recent years, the political scene has been calmer, and Jamaica has sought to wield significant influence on the world stage in debates about climate change and reparations for slavery. But still, Jamaicans want to see their country made more secure. What will that take? Well, Edmund Bartlett joins me now. Welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's my honor and pleasure to share this 25 minutes or so with you.
Thank you. We're delighted you're here. Let's start with your specific responsibility, your portfolio, tourism in Jamaica. Do you think it is healthy for Jamaica to be an economy that right now is so heavily dependent on tourism?
Tourism's role in economic development and economic building is very pervasive and sometimes misunderstood, because tourism is not a single economic activity. It's a confluence of many economic parts, all of which have an economic outcome of its own. So that tourism doesn't happen unless agriculture is flourishing and doing well. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen unless manufacturing is flourishing and doing well. It doesn't happen unless energy supplies are available and medical supplies are available and a range of services. It doesn't happen unless entertainment is available, attractions are available. So I could go on and on.
I get your point. I mean, clearly it is a part of a much bigger economic picture.
It's
and there are
ecosystem.
Sort of interlinks within that economy. I get that. But fundamentally, right now, pretty much 1/3 of economic activity in your country is linked to tourism. And we saw during COVID how vulnerable that can leave Jamaica if things go wrong.
Right. But that vulnerability is balanced by resilience that tourism has, which is the most resilient of all industry. It bounces back faster and it enables economic recovery at a faster rate. So that within a year and a half of COVID, Jamaica's economy was back on track. In fact, we had 11 consecutive quarters of economic growth, unprecedented in our history, because tourism grew and grew exponentially. In the period, we moved from 0 arrivals in 3 years to 4.3 million arrivals and earning 4.6 billion US dollars.
I mean, the numbers are impressive, but at some point you're going to have to rein in your ambition. I saw somewhere you said you want to see 6 million visitors a year. I mean,
Prime Minister actually said 8.
8?
Yes.
But your population is only, 2.8 million?
Well,
this sounds like you are putting a strain on the resources, the infrastructure of your country that, frankly, it may not be able to bear.
Excellent point, in fact, because that's what defines over-tourism and the final analysis.
And you must be aware that in the west of your country, Negril and some other tourist communities close by, there have been water shortages. People have had to bring in privatized water at vast expense. There are people in their hotel rooms saying they couldn't get a shower, they couldn't get drinking water, it was in short supply.
So here's the challenge. The challenge is to build a carrying capacity to enable us to plan appropriately and to accrete your infrastructure capacity to enable this increase in arrivals. So the decision to have 8 million is not lightly taken, and it has to be against the background of a whole series of development and infrastructure improvement, i.e. building carrying capacity over time to enable 8 million.
And at the same time as you say that the government is absolutely across that need to build in resilience, you also know that there are grave concerns in Jamaica about the long-term impacts of climate change.
Indeed.
And extreme weather events, which, as we saw this last summer with Hurricane Beryl, are putting another and very different massive strain on your infrastructure and resources.
Absolutely. And, that's why we we move very quickly to establish institutional mechanisms to build capacity to, one, forecast disruptions, observatories that allow us to look down the road to see what's happening. Secondly, to create opportunities for mitigation against these disruptions. Thirdly, to build capacity to manage the disruptions when they come. And then to recover quickly. And fifthly, to thrive.
See, I just
so
wonder,
so
again,
it's against that background, that I established the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center.
Listen, I get it. I get your ambition, but I also wonder about that word hubris. You know, you're talking about very quickly getting to 8 million visitors a year. We know that extreme weather events are becoming more common, not least in the Caribbean. And then I look at what happened this summer when Hurricane Beryl hit, and immediately, according to UNICEF, 160,000 Jamaicans, including almost 40,000 children, were in dire need of humanitarian assistance. I mean, it just seems there's something going on here.
We recovered so fast from the Beryl. Indeed, Beryl didn't hit Jamaica directly. What happened is that Beryl passed close to the southern side of Jamaica, and the outer bands of Beryl caused some difficulty for us. But the northern side of Jamaica was essentially untouched.
Sure.
For example,
the south was. I guess I'm just getting to this point. If one looks forward, do you believe when it comes to climate change, let's leave aside the strain of tourism, but do you believe when it comes to climate change that Jamaica is getting enough long-term investment and assistance from the rich world, as has been promised at various climate summits and conferences? Because I'm looking at the figures, and thus far, given the nature, the scale of the pledges, countries like Jamaica are actually getting very, very little in terms of real, tangible assistance.
That I agree 100% with you on that. And that is perhaps the challenge of island states such as Jamaica that are, in fact, highly vulnerable and weakly resourced. So there has to be a greater ambition among the multilaterals to recognize the particular vulnerability of island states in this regard and to provide greater support, and also to provide support at a level that enables them to access it. Because that's part of the big problem, that the protocols are so onerous that small countries like Jamaica have a difficulty in accessing it to the extent that we require. So that really has to be the big argument that must occupy our discourse.
And that's going to be a huge challenge, to get your voice heard and to get tangible help. But let's talk now about a different challenge facing you as tourism minister, but facing your government more generally. And that is the massive damaging impact of endemic violent crime inside Jamaica. It damages people inside your country. It tarnishes your reputation.
Bear in mind, this interview was on the 24th of November last year. Given that they were continuing to peddle the crime argument, them don't realize that everybody watch and listen to them, but listen to his continuous dancing on ice.
Far beyond your own country. It's extremely damaging for the tourism sector. What are you going to do about it?
Well, firstly, we recognize it as a challenge, and it's a challenge that is not peculiar to Jamaica, but that gives us no comfort.
I'll tell you what's peculiar
that absolutely
to Jamaica,
gives us no comfort.
Problem. If you look at the homicide rate in Jamaica, it outstrips any other country with a significant population in the whole of Latin America and the Caribbean. Your murder rate is far higher than Honduras, for example, which used to be the murder capital of the world, far higher than Ecuador or El Salvador. And if one looks across the world at countries like South Africa, which have a huge violent crime problem, you're far higher in terms of homicide rate than
Stephen,
South Africa.
Here's the story. The work has been done and is being done. Jamaica is realizing reduction in every element of violent crime over the last 12 months in particular. We're seeing tangible work. Investment has been put into building capacity for social development, for dealing with recidivism, to deal with whole building of capacity for people to have better understanding and relationships. So all of that is happening. Then hard laws are being put in place to deal with it. So it's not just a question of punitive action. It is also about social development. Through the ZOSO that we have developed, these are zones of economic support for communities that are pressured, socially deprived. If
You
will.
say you're,
and it is
you're on
making
top
a
of it.
huge difference.
Do you,
I just want to make.
Let me. There's space here for a few questions. Do you know how many separate armed criminal gangs are believed to be at work in Jamaica right now?
I don't have a figure on that, but what I'm saying is that the level of dismantling of those gangs have been phenomenal.
Well, I mean, for your information,
no question
a
about
respected 2021 study.
You should have a figure on that, EDMUND Bartlett. I don't have the figure right now, but last year, Horace Chang told us the amount of gangs there were in the country, the amount they have put in front of the court, the amount they've dismantled, and the amount they're still tackling and investigating. So you, EDMUND Bartlett, you should have had that detail going to the BBC, because the way the BBC does interview, the BBC would have submit questions to you prior to the interview. Lying, Edmund.
Admittedly, that's 3 years old, but there's no reason to believe it's changed very much. Found there were, quote, 379 separate organized criminal gangs in Jamaica with a population of fewer than 3 million.
But it is very interesting that number could be there. But look at how they have been managed over time. And the truth of the matter is that we have been dismantling, and the Ministry of National Security has had enormous record over the last number of years in dismantling them. And Jamaica's position has not caused, for example, the growth in our tourism. Let's take, for example, which is a very sensitive industry, has not caused a growth reduction. Indeed, we have grown exponentially over the period.
Well, hang on. What if that's true?
And critically,
you're making the case. You're saying, you know what, we're on top of it. Things are getting better. If that is all true, why has the U.S. government, for example, still got a travel advisory out which suggests that all those considering traveling to Jamaica should, quote unquote, reconsider travel due to crime? And if you do go, it says, exercise increased caution. Some areas have increased risk. It says violent crime occurs throughout the country. Sexual assaults occur frequently, including in all-inclusive resorts. That's the official US government advice.
That narrative is the narrative of a few months ago. You should look at the most recent. You should look at the most recent
from the
narrative.
US government.
The fact is, however, that this is a category 3, which we have had since COVID, and notwithstanding that, we have seen exponential growth. Investment in Jamaica has been phenomenal. FDI has grown phenomenally, and we have had 11 consecutive quarters of economic growth. Now, that is not to say.
But do you think the US government, the UK government, whose travel advisories still advise enormous caution if traveling to Jamaica, and at least in the Americans' case, argue that you should reconsider your travel plans? Do you think that they are just plain wrong? And if you do, what are you doing about it?
Absolutely, we're not saying you're wrong. What we're saying is that what has been indicated there is not altogether related to activities that are happening, because travel advisories are a composite of many things, including geopolitical considerations. And we don't ignore that. And we take that, and the good news, in fact, if there's any, is that the arrivals out of the US, for example, has almost doubled in the last 8 years.
Just one other point. We've discussed violent crime. You say that the trends are in a positive direction. There's one other thing which is on the minds of some potential visitors to Jamaica, and that is Jamaican attitudes to homosexuality, in particular male gay sex. Now, under your law, as I understand it, that can be penalized. That is, gay sex between men can be penalized by prison terms up to 10 years, including hard labor. And the UK official advice to travelers says, and I'm quoting, the attitude of many Jamaicans towards same-sex relationships is hostile. Your tourism minister, would you like to see Jamaica change its laws and change its attitude toward homosexuality?
Well, I tell you, once you go, you know. And I think that's statement which is factual for all visitors who come to Jamaica, including UK visitors.
Once
you know, today,
go, you know, what do you mean?
Once you go, you know how hospitable, how kind, and how responsive the Jamaicans are to all visitors of whatever class, race, creed, lifestyle, or orientation. And there's no question about that.
If you're a gay man who chooses to holiday in Jamaica with your partner, you can, as I understand the law, be at risk of being locked up.
Well, you'll be surprised if you ever come to see, and perhaps you should.
Well, I'd love to come to Jamaica.
Absolutely.
I just want to be clear. Are you saying these laws, though they're on the statute book, mean nothing? Is that what you're saying?
No. We're not saying that at all. But you know that laws are stated in relation to a number of factors. And indeed, laws have also timelines that go beyond what is current. And current situations sometimes reflect not necessarily what legal positions are.
Talking about the law and talking about lawlessness, I think it's interesting to think about Jamaica in the wider context of your region. I mean, interesting things are happening in other countries. I'm thinking now of Central America, which is not so very far away, where various countries have tried to address violent crime, gangs and cartels, and a prominent country doing its utmost is El Salvador. Now there, the president has passed draconian new laws, which have seen him lock up, and I think this is right from my latest reading, up to 1% of the entire population. That is a vast number of young males have been locked up because of their involvement in criminal gangs and violent crime. Homicides, as a result of this crackdown, have gone down from 53 per 100,000, still not quite as high as you in Jamaica, just as 2.4. i.e., a draconian crackdown works. Would Jamaica consider it?
We're a democracy. And we have to respond.
I mean, President Bukele in El Salvador, yes, he was elected too.
But we are a democracy from your Westminster system. And we rule essentially by the laws, as you know. And we think that managing our crime situation has to be a mix of many factors. Strong laws, strong action by way of policing, but strong social interventions as well. And that's a mix that Jamaica is using to deal with the crime.
But that the indication Jamaica is not going to engage in. Is that what you're saying?
Draconian lockdowns of that type would not go well with the kind of democracy that we have.
Do you think you get enough help from the end user countries where the cocaine that passes through Jamaica is consumed? I'm thinking of the United States and Europe. Do you think you get enough help from them when it comes to cracking down on drug use, consumption? And do you think you get enough help, particularly from the United States, when it comes to stopping the flow of guns, weapons into your country?
That's the problem. The real problem is stopping the flow of guns and weapons into the country. And so that there is need for much more ambition in this area, far more support to enable a significant cessation of flows into our space.
Let me ask you about a different set of questions which are facing Jamaica, because as I said at the very beginning, you pride yourselves on being an influential country across the Caribbean. And one of the big questions facing you and some other Caribbean nations is whether you want to, in the end, cut your ties with the British monarchy, stop recognizing the British monarch as your formal head of state. Jamaica said some time ago, the government said that it was going to put a proposal before the people of your country by 2025. Now it seems that's not going to happen. Why?
Well, the proposal is pretty much on track. I think one of the changes that you have to consider in all of this is one which brings people into the mainstream of discussions and discourses so that there's full consensus in every step of the way. And that process is ongoing in Jamaica now. And yes, we will repatriate our sovereignty. There's no question about that. And I think that's the way that all countries want to go.
You say there's no question about it, but I'm looking at what you said in 2022 when William and Kate visited Jamaica. You said then the time has come to address this issue of repatriating our sovereignty. We need to do it now with grace and ease and no rancor. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, you said that.
And that remains a position.
Well, yeah, but nothing's actually,
no,
it's not
is
being
happening.
delivered, is it?
No, it is very much being delivered.
If I may, because people won't know this, you're now locked in a dispute with the opposition party in Jamaica because the opposition says they will not support going to a referendum and support the idea of cutting ties with the monarchy unless at the very same time your government agrees that it's not just about the monarchy, but also a change so that the new final court of arbitration for Jamaicans is no longer the Privy Council, as it's always been under the current system, but becomes the Caribbean Court of Justice. Your government is refusing.
Hold on there. Have mercy. Sorry. Sorry, my peeps. Which part we did there again? Hold on. Where? What have I done here? Hold on the peeps. I don't know what we need to do. Yes or no. Forget it back. Stop.
Travelers says, and I'm quoting, the attitude of many Jamaicans towards same-sex relationships is hostile. Your tourism minister, about lawlessness, I think it's interesting laws, which I've seen him lock up, and I think this is right from my latest reading, up to 1% of the entire population. That is a vast number of young males have been locked up because of their involvement in criminal gangs and violent crime. Homicides, as a result of this crackdown, have gone down from 53 per 100,000, still not quite as high as you in Jamaica, just as 2.4, i.e. a draconian crackdown works. Would Jamaica consider it?
We're a democracy, and we have to respond.
I mean, President Bukele in El Salvador, he was elected too.
But we are a democracy from your Westminster system. And we rule essentially by the laws, as you know. And we think that managing our crime situation has to be a mix of many factors. Strong laws, strong action by way of policing, but strong social interventions as well. And that's a mix that Jamaica is using to deal with the crime.
But that
the indication,
Jamaica is not going to engage in. Is that what you're saying?
Draconian lockdowns of that type would not go well with the kind of democracy that we have.
Do you think you get enough help from the end user countries where the cocaine that passes through Jamaica is consumed? I'm thinking of the United States and Europe. Do you think you get enough help from them when it comes to cracking down on drug use, consumption? And do you think you get enough help, particularly from the United States, when it comes to stopping the flow of guns, weapons into your country?
That's the problem. The real problem is stopping the flow of guns and weapons into the country. And so that there is need for much more ambition in this area, far more support to enable a significant cessation of flows into our space.
Let me ask you about a different set of questions which are facing Jamaica, because as I said at the very beginning, you pride yourselves on being an influential country across the Caribbean. And one of the big questions facing you and some other Caribbean nations is whether you want to, in the end, cut your ties with the British monarchy, stop recognizing the British monarch as your formal head of state. Jamaica said some time ago, the government said that it was going to put a proposal before the people of your country by 2025. Now it seems that's not going to happen. Why?
Well, the proposal is pretty much on track. I think one of the changes that you have to consider in all of this is one which brings people into the mainstream of discussions and discourses so that there's full consensus in every step of the way. And that process is ongoing in Jamaica now. And yes, we will repatriate our sovereignty. There's no question about that. And I think that's the way that all countries want to go.
You say there's no question about it, but I'm looking at what you said in 2022 when William and Kate visited Jamaica. You said then the time has come to address this issue of repatriating our sovereignty. We need to do it now with grace and ease and no rancor. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, you said that.
And that remains the position.
Well, yeah, but nothing's actually,
no,
it's not being
happening.
delivered, is it?
No, it is very much being delivered.
If I may, because people won't know this, you're now locked in a dispute with the opposition party in Jamaica because the opposition says they will not support going to a referendum and support the idea of cutting ties with the monarchy unless at the very same time your government agrees that it's not just about the monarchy, but also a change so that the new final court of arbitration for Jamaicans is no longer the Privy Council, as it's always been under the current system, but becomes the Caribbean Court of Justice. Your government is refusing to accept that.
Yeah, but that's the opposition's position. We're government, and we're government because we are managing the will of the people. And so the position that the government takes on the matter is in consonance with the will of the people. So the opposition may have a position, and the day when the people give them the mandate, then of course. But what it is now is that we're moving ahead to repatriate our sovereignty. The process is ongoing. We have a minister who is responsible for piloting the process through the parliament and also with multiple consultations across the country. Town hall meetings are happening as we speak in various parts of the country where we're getting feedback from people as to what the new constitution amendment should be.
But I guess the opposition has one advantage, and that is logic, because the opposition is saying it has to be about full, quote unquote, full decolonization. That is, not just cutting ties with the monarchy, but cutting ties with the Privy Council.
But decolonization doesn't mean that you lose everything that may be beneficial to you. To repatriate your sovereignty means that you now have responsibility for your own management, and you choose what you need to retain and what you should not. And so the right of Jamaicans to retain what they feel is good for them must never be denied.
The right of Jamaicans are the right of
Jamaicans to also get financial compensation from the UK government for the history of enslavement which your people suffered from?
I think it is a discussion that must continue because there is a growing consensus among peoples of the world that the wrongs, the heinous wrongs of history need to be made right. And I think reparation is a discussion along that line.
But are you talking about clear financial compensation? Because the UK Foreign Secretary at the recent Commonwealth Summit in Samoa said that it is not, quote, about the transfer of cash. I just wonder whether you as a government minister in Jamaica think very clearly it is about the transfer of cash.
Well, I don't personally, and this is not a government position, personally, I don't think it is necessarily about transfer of cash. I think it is a lot more about a recognition that a wrong has been done and a determination to right that wrong. Now, the mechanisms for right.
Let me stop Edmund Bartlett there before he finishes. Reparation, there are precedents, Edmund Bartlett, for reparations. Look at the history of Jamaica. Look at the history of Haiti. I'm giving you those two. Those two, Edmund Bartlett, who were forced, those two countries, Jamaica up until 2015, Edmund Bartlett, was forced to pay reparations to the farmers who lose us their property, Edmund Bartlett. Also, the Zionists received compensation from Germany. The Japanese received compensation, reparations from the Americans who dropped those bombs on them, Edmund Bartlett. So there's many precedent for reparation, which involves the handing over of cash, Edmund Bartlett, as well as supporting the building of social, political, and infrastructure institutions. The precedent is there, Edmund Bartlett. I don't know where I talk about, where I come from, which rock them jaw you from under.
I think that wrong. It's still for discussion, whether it is about cash transfers or it is about creating institutional support mechanism to build technical support for individuals, educational development, or other social development. But what has to be done is some reparatory activity.
A cynic might say that the British government, by saying it wants to continue the discussion, but saying that, you know, there's no prospect of cash being transferred, it wants to kick the whole issue into the long grass.
The British
Do you
government
believe,
can't
from the
tell with
perspective
that.
of Jamaica, perspective of the Caribbean, that it can be kicked into the long grass and essentially forgotten?
Well, I think that it is impatient of time, and attempting to kick in the long grass will not wear well with a growing consciousness in the world, not just here in the UK, because the consciousness is strong in the UK too. There are far more conciliatory comments that are coming from quarters that were totally unexpected, because I think the clash of of values, what I call the intergenerational clash of values, have now come to roost. We are recognizing that indeed the values of the past caused a wrong that has scarred humanity, and that wrong must be made right, and the time for it is now.
Edmund Bartlett, we have to end there, but I thank you for joining me on Hard Talk.
Thank you, Stephen.
Make what you will of Edmund Bartlett yabbering. Make what you will of Edmund Bartlett yabbering, but I hope Cliff Hughes get an understanding of how you push crooked politicians into a corner when interviewing them. But Edmund Bartlett, you're very under-researched because there are several precedents for reparation. And I don't see why, when you're talking to Auntie, you're shuffling and bustling around as to whether reparations is an entitlement. It is. There are precedent for it. The issue with reparations and the British government telling us that there will be no handover of money is because they're dealing with crony leaders from Africa to the Caribbean. That is why them can't turn up and tell them something. If we have leaders across Africa and the Caribbean, like Abraham Toure, the British government will have to have that conversation with us. It is because we have political lapdogs, like Andrew, like, what the boy a Kenya name? William Ruto, and all the others. That's why the British government can advance that conversation. While at the same time, them are drain we wealth same way. Gloria Morris, Jason Kane, how you do? Hopes Official, EM, Leon McIntyre. How no do? But Yvette Grant, I hope when you see how Edmund Bartlett dance on ice and I talk about, you see, Edmund, the problem is, none of we don't understand what you talk about when you talk about on build infrastructure and on fight crime here. There. We don't understand. That is the problem we are having. Philly Yard Vibes, well gone. We do not understand when on a talk. That's one of our biggest problem. That's why we're so confused. Because we have to decide which side on the mouth on our talk out and what on really mean. You have not answered one question, Edmund Bartlett. Colleen Allen, how are you? You have not answered one question. What you continue to do is slip from one ice ring, Evan Bradford, to the other, Andy Brown. All you did, Edmund Bartlett, was slip from one ice ring to the other. But not one of those questions have you answered. The way how your government peddle the argument and crime and continues to give us figures on crime, and you go to an interview with Auntie Beebs and you don't have your crime figure, how much active gangs we've had in the country, how much have we dismantled, how much we've had in front of the court. Edmund Bartlett, Bransford McLean, how you do? These are the bare-faced dunce. The sticky, frisky finger dunce, them. what we have around the country. That's why not now go on for we. That's why everything mash up and pop down round way. Because everything will make the country a better place. It's controlled by Dunce. Dunce Edmund, Dunce Andrew, Dunce the two Gillette, Dunce Rhoda will tell we say her achievement is spending public money. Gillette will tell we say Sandy. And we tell we say if we want to mash out dirt, rather than tamp on it, just take a scissors and cut it. And Vaz will tell young people say, when you come from school, go around corner, rub out and mingle and get high. Never mind, we're coming back later. We just want to bring you this interview during our Drive Time London segment this evening. Thank you for being here with us. Make sure to like and share the live because we need to get this interview out. Because you know when things do a foreign, it depends on TikTok as well. Some who have it on TikTok? What person? I don't remember the person name now. Have it on TikTok. But we need to get it as wide as ever. Because you see when they go foreign go tell lie, they don't know so the whole world are watching them thing. And when the interview on the paper and foreign station and we don't have access to it. But thank you all for joining us for Drive Time London. Join us back tonight for the people's point of view. And make sure to share this live to a WhatsApp group and everything so people can see, oh, Edmund Bartlett lie, dunce, thief, and wicked. Good evening from the Global Television Group.
If you don't like missing out on the latest shows but still enjoy classic hits, then Global TV Group 358 is your perfect match. Global TV Group 358 isn't just another channel, it's your ultimate TV experience. From breaking news to binge-worthy dramas and timeless classics, we've got it all. Our unique blend of original content and global favorites means there's something for everyone. And guess what? With GTVG's seamless streaming, you can watch anywhere, anytime. Plus, our interactive features let you be part of the action. So, whether you're a seasoned binge watcher or a casual viewer, Global TV Group 358 is here to keep you entertained day and night. Don't just watch TV, experience it with Global TV Group 358. Subscribe now and never miss a moment.